Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. Welcome, everyone. Super excited to be here tonight for another Thursday evening stroll around our celestial neighborhood. Welcome. So I'm Irene Pease, your friendly neighborhood astronomer. And tonight, because I guess there's nothing else happening this month, apparently, just kidding. The big thing that's happening this month is next Thursday morning, bright and early, depending on where you are in the world. We have a partial eclipse happening, or an annular eclipse, or a partial annular, or there's a syzygy. We're just going to call it a syzygy because it's one of my favorite words and any excuse to use it. So we're going to go with that. So we're going to talk about our special early morning sunrise syzygy, and that's basically what I'm going to talk about for a little bit here. So I'll be using visuals as usual, Stellarium, which you can find at stellarium.org, and also OpenSpace, which you can find and download for free at openspaceproject.com. Um, so yeah, let's just jump right in because I don't know. I always feel like I have too much and then I don't. Whatever. Anyway, we're just gonna jump right on over to Stellarium and see what's up in the sky now. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that because we're going to be looking more at what's going to be in the sky next Thursday morning. So this is Brooklyn, our beautiful fields of yellow flowers that we have somewhere. And yeah, this is now. So it's bright. We're noticing that it's still light out, getting later and later. Yes, we're coming up on the solstice, summer solstice for the northern hemisphere, which means we have lots and lots of daylight. So that's great. Um, After the sun sets, and maybe even just a little bit before the sun sets, if we fast forward through time, a couple hours here, we have the Venus still. I think it was cloudy last week when Venus and Mercury were like right next to each other. I literally ran over to the park and it was like, oh, they're too low. Um, yeah, so that we didn't see that. But I think some other people got pictures. I saw cool pictures on Twitter. So Venus is still out there. Mercury is going to be, we'll see Mercury maybe in the morning later on. More on that later. But yeah, that's really kind of what we want to be looking at. As far as nighttime things to look for in the sky, I guess the main thing this week is going to be a Milky Way. I'll just say, throw that out there, Milky Way. Because we're kind of close to the solstice, the Milky Way gets pretty high overhead, I guess a little bit later in the evening, but it's up early enough that you can see it even if you go to bed at a semi-reasonable hour. So here we are, um, semi-reasonable hour. It's not quite midnight, and the Milky Way is up there. So that would be tonight, right? So over the next week or so, it's going to be rising, of course, earlier and earlier. And if you live somewhere where it's really dark and really clear, um, then, it might actually strike you as kind of like a cloud, like a haziness. I used to do astronomy out in Arizona, and I leave in the middle of the night and think, oh, good thing we're shutting down because there's clouds rolling in. Oh no, wait, nope, that's the Milky Way. So the summer Milky Way for us Northerners, the summer Milky Way is a lot brighter and it's a pretty distinct band that goes across the sky. So start looking for that now. Start kind of gauging, how dark your skies are where you are, if you can see any of this. This next week is a good week to look for it because there won't be a moon. So again, it'll be a little bit easier to spot in the darker sky without the extra, reflected light from the moon. But yeah, really what we care about is that moon coming up. That's going to be kind of the star of the show, no pun intended. Not so much the sun, but the moon blocking the sun. Because really, when you're looking at a solar eclipse, you're looking at the moon, but you're also looking at the sun, so don't look directly at it. More disclaimers about that in a bit. But I might be getting ahead of myself here. Checking notes. Yes. All right. So what's happening with an eclipse? We'll find out in a little bit. Just one more thing while we're in Stellarium, because we're actually going to switch back and forth quite a bit. I want to put up this fancy schmancy line called the ecliptic. So ecliptic sounds a lot like eclipse, and there's a reason for that because eclipses happen along the ecliptic. That is the path of the sun against the background of stars over the course of the year. So a lot of times we'll say it's basically the plane of the solar system as seen from Earth, but it's if we look, um, different things in the solar system may not be exactly along the ecliptic. So actually, if I kind of fast forward here, let's go back a few days and forward a few hours. We don't have to go back in time that far. If you go forward a few hours, we look and we say, oh, yeah, there's planets and they're kind of along the ecliptic. So Saturn, not exactly on the ecliptic, but close. Jupiter, not exactly on the ecliptic, but close. And somewhere in here would be a moon if we kind of scroll through maybe another few hours. Yep, there's the moon. Way off the ecliptic. Wowzers. Um, we're still going to call that close. All right, and more on that in a little bit. But if we bring this up and have, oh, there was Uranus, the sun, saw Mercury and Venus in there briefly. The sun is exactly on the ecliptic. Okay, so again, that's how we define the ecliptic. So the other stuff in our solar system appears near that line, but not necessarily exactly on that line. All right, enough about the ecliptic for now. Back over to open space. All open and spacey. Gosh, it's just so refreshing every time I click over here, I swear. Like a breath of fresh air. So open space again, this is open source software. It's continually being updated. So always check the website for updates. I know I don't check it often enough because I'm really lazy about updating anything on my computer, not just open space. Um, but basically using all real data. So these lines would not appear if we were out in space, but a lot of this other stuff would basically, like, this is kind of how things would look out in space. So all the stars are in the right positions and the planets and the moon and everything, all at the relative time. So really fun to line things up. So right now, I think I need to step through open space time-wise a little bit. We're just kind of looking at the Earth-Moon system. So hopefully you can see kind of that blue line, that's the Earth's orbit as we're coming around the sun. And then we have this green line that's showing the path of the moon that goes around the Earth. And if we start to look at this a little bit more, just the right angle, then we're seeing some of the maybe the lines, the markers of the other planets in our solar system. And we kind of line this up. So remember how most of the planets were kind of along the ecliptic or pretty darn close, right? So we can see that the moon, it sticks off a little bit, right? So here's kind of that plane of the solar system, right? The other planets are kind of lining up more or less along here, but the moon is off a little bit, like it's tilted. So on one side, it's a little bit higher, one side, it's a little bit lower. So it's tilted by about 5 degrees, just over 5 degrees. So that doesn't sound like a lot. 5, measly schmeasly degrees out of like 180 degrees from horizon to horizon, big whoop. But it does make a big difference, especially when we think about how big the sun really is in our sky. So kind of that difference that it doesn't line up exactly or nearly as closely with the ecliptic as some other things in our solar system, that really does make a difference. So if I kind of scroll back over here, we can see, I'll just turn off the atmosphere if you hold your breath for a few minutes, no biggie. Um, so we can see like Saturn and Jupiter, those are really close. Like those are, let's see, Stellarium actually has all these beautiful features that I'm still learning. If you want to learn more about Stellarium, I'll post a link closer to date, but there's going to be a class taught through the Amateur Astronomers Association this fall, and I'm totally taking it. All right, so so Jupiter is less than a degree from the ecliptic at this point. Saturn, I can measure these little numbers, like, it's about half a degree from the ecliptic at this point. But if we look at the moon, see how far the moon is. Turn on my little angle thingy again. Man, it's hilarious, super fun. Um, yeah, like I said, it's a little over 5 degrees. So it's like we're seeing this as about 5 and change degrees from the ecliptic. And just keeping in mind that the moon itself is only half a degree, right? It might look really huge in the sky, but that's just a kind of an illusion because of how well your eye works and really how well your brain works. Our eyes don't work as well as we think they do. Really, it's our brains that do a lot of the grunt work and making up pretty pictures in our heads. But yeah, the moon is only, I'm just going to use this angle thing, just rocking this angle. Whoosh. How big is the moon? It's only half a degree, right? So when we say that the moon is up to 5 degrees or even more, we can see here off the ecliptic, that's 10 moon diameters. Like, so those add up. All right. So it's not necessarily going to be passing right in front of the sun every time the moon goes around us, but sometimes it does. Like this month it does. Um, so that's kind of a big deal that at some point, oops, sometimes we kind of scroll through time just a little bit here. So we'll follow yield moon from one date to the next. And I did that wrong, but it's okay because I'm going to take a class and I'm going to remember all the hotkeys. But we'll see. Oh, it's basically gonna cross the ecliptic, and it's gonna pass right in front of the sun. All right, so more on that in just a bit. But first, we're gonna pop back over to open space. See if I can confuse myself a little bit. All right, so we looked at the angle, right? So the angles need to line up. Um, if we're going to have this awesome syzygy. So we need not just not just the moon to pass between the earth and the sun, like it kind of does that every month, except that sometimes it's a little bit off the ecliptic when it's doing that. So it doesn't pass exactly between us and the sun. The other thing that's happening here, which might be a little bit tricky to see with the moon, but we'll just give it a go anyway, is that it doesn't go around the Earth in like a perfect circle, right? So surprise, things don't always orbit in circles. In fact, they very rarely orbit in circles. Circles are kind of special and rare, and we usually see ellipses, right? So most orbits we see, I don't want to say all because somewhere in the universe, I don't know, it's a big universe, there might be something that's not. But we're going to say basically expect to see things orbiting in ellipses. So like a slightly stretched circle. And I was gonna try to bring this around. Okay, all right. So we can see the circle, and it's more or less, sorry, this ellipse, not a circle. So we can see this dot circle and this ellipse. So because it's an ellipse, sometimes the moon is a little bit closer to the Earth, and sometimes it's a little bit further from the Earth. Um, yeah, so as far as like why things would move in ellipses, if that's the question about the gravity, like when things start, I don't know, I just think of things as like kind of coming together and spinning and whirling and swirling. And when they're doing that, they're inevitably going to be not exactly centered, not exactly lined up. Yeah, so gravity is keeping the moon going around the Earth. Um, but but it's not going to be in a perfect circle. You can imagine, yeah, there could be other things. Well, there are other things kind of tugging on it gravitationally, um, which is going to kind of cause the ellipse to precess so that like the near point and far points kind of wobble a little bit and kind of shift around. Um, but that's a little more orbital mechanics than I was going to get into today. But you have this kind of slightly squished circle. Don't let the mathematicians hear you say that. Where sometimes you're a little bit closer and sometimes you're a little bit further. Okay, so what in the world does that have to do with our eclipse for next Thursday? I'm so glad you asked. So these near and far points, in terms of things going around the Earth, it's called perigee and apogee. So peri means close, and apo is far. And so when it's at perigee, that's like the closest, and the closest that the moon gets is around, we'll call it 363,000 kilometers. Okay, so give or take, it's off by a few hundred, but try not to throw lots of massive numbers. So about 363,000 kilometers. Compared to apogee, its far point, that's more like 405,000 kilometers. So 363 compared to 405. So that's kind of a big difference between the closest and farthest points. So when the things are closer, we know they tend to look bigger, right? Right. Oh wait, I have this picture over in here actually. Forgot about that. And when they're further, they look smaller, right? So when the moon is closer, it should look bigger because it's like, I mean, not just a few kilometers closer, but apparently, I didn't do math in my head earlier. 40,000 kilometers. It's like 40,000 kilometers closer. 40,000 kilometers is a lot. But the moon's far away and it's big and all these other things, yada, yada, yada. So, really, most people, if you look up when the moon is really close versus when it's really far, you're not going to notice a difference. So, this is like looking like with a magnified view. I made these images using stellarium. Um, so on the one side, you have what we might call a supermoon, where the moon is full and close when it's full and close to perigee, and then when the moon is full but far away. So people call that a wimpy moon or a micro moon. I don't know what anyone has an excuse to call it a micro moon. The moon is not micro. Micro is like tiny. Um, but yeah, so there you have the smaller moon or the wimpy moon, super moon, wimpy moon. But I mean, really, the moon is just always awesome. So just looking up in the sky, you're not gonna know unless you like read the news that day and it was like advertising super moon. Sorry, folks, the moon is always super. It's always beautiful. You should always try to look at it unless it's close to the sun and it's dangerous. All right. So yeah, not a huge difference that you would normally notice unless you're actually taking pictures, comparing them very carefully side by side. Right. But yes, it is going to make a difference when you're trying to block out something that is in exactly the same size or very, very close to the same angular size as the moon in the sky. So that's like this bizarro, interesting, fascinating thing about our solar system right now is that from our vantage point on the Earth, the sun is about half a degree. It takes up about half a degree of diameter in the sky, which is basically the same as the moon, right? So when the sun and the moon and the Earth line up, with the moon in the middle, I should say, then then the moon can actually completely block out the sun. But if it's farther away, then it's going to look a little bit smaller. And so it won't block it out completely, which is what's happening this month. So that's where we have this annular eclipse where it's not going to be actually complete. And I forgot if I was supposed to actually, yes, yes. So we actually want to see, sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here. Since I'm already here, we're going to visit Greenland and we're going to see what this might look like from Greenland. So I found this spot earlier today. Greenland. I didn't find Greenland. I mean, I'm not like trying to claim credit or anything. But yeah, so if we view this from Greenland, let's go ahead and turn the atmosphere back on so we can be like halfway realistic. So Greenland's like really far north, and we're going to notice something. We'll pop back over and see this in open space also. But Greenland, if we zoom out and see, wow, Greenland's really green this time of year. Looks kind of like Brooklyn. What a coincidence. If we go ahead and see what's happening in the sky this time of year at Greenland, we wait for the sun to set. Oh wait, it doesn't. Sneaky sun. So this is really, really far north. We're at like 80 plus degrees north latitude. But what we will see is we kind of zoom in the early morning. If I do just kind of zoom in on the moon here. Oh, hey moon. But what we will see is the moon move into position as we were looking, and it's going to block out part of the sun. But again, because it's further away, its shadow isn't going to be long enough. Its main shadow isn't going to be long enough, so to speak, to reach the Earth. So we'll get like kind of a partial. But if it were closer, it would block out the full sun. But as it is, it blocks out most of the sun. Womp. Okay, so there's the moon blocking out most of the sun, but we have this kind of ring around the outside. We call it the ring of fire, not to be confused with the ring of fire that's like all volcanic and whatnot around the Pacific. But yeah, that's what makes an annular solar eclipse an annular. So if it were like a total solar eclipse, then you wouldn't have this ring of sun still visible. Okay, since we're still basically being exposed to the surface of the sun, that bright part of the sun. Don't look directly at the annular eclipse, even if you're able to see it like this. It's not safe to look at the sun without proper shielding. Blah blah blah. Sunglasses are not proper shielding. Um, I'll find a link or something you can figure out how to make that a proper way to see this safely. But yeah, so that's what you would see if you were up in Greenland. So, and then the moon keeps moving along, moving along. So it does get a little bit darker. It gets a little bit darker than it's going to be, I guess, for the next few months in Greenland. So we actually kind of zoom out and just wind back in time and see, yeah, it's a little bit darker, not a whole lot. During a total solar eclipse, it gets quite a bit darker in the sky when the whole sun is being blocked out. Highly recommend those. But I made a thing in open space, just a quick bookmark, so we could see what is happening, kind of in 3D here. If I can find, not that, find my handy dandy bookmark. So it's another fun thing you can do in open space. Um, is kind of bookmark stuff. So this is bookmarked for Wednesday evening, and what we're looking at right now, some of you might recognize, is basically the North Pole. So we're looking down onto the North Pole of the Earth, and you'll notice that it's lit because again, we're coming up on the northern summer solstice. So the northern summer solstice, that's when like the north part is like continuously lit. So as we saw in stellarium, the sun just kind of cruises around the horizon and it doesn't actually set. So again, this is June 9th. So we'll just kind of cruise kind of quickly through one full day, and you can kind of see like a little slice in the data. So this is all real data. Since we're looking into the future, these aren't the actual weather patterns, but that's a cool thing with open space. You can actually see like the weather patterns from a given day. So if we were looking at today, those might actually be the clouds from today or yesterday. But we're seeing sun's not setting, right? So really far north, it's all going to be lit um, all through what would be the night. Um, and I don't know if you can tell. So this is Greenland, so New York and stuff are like down in here. So it should be night, but the sun's not going to set. But I'm just going to speed this up just a little bit, so we can zip around here. Rawr. And then go a little bit slower. We can see what will be happening. Skip ahead an hour or two. So again, the moon is way out there in space, and it does cast a shadow. Everything in the solar system casts a shadow, and these shadows are like these cones of darker regions that extend out away from the sun radially. So if the Earth passes through part of the moon's shadow that's being cast, then we should see this dark spot on the Earth as the moon moves along in front of the sun. And that's exactly what we see here. So already you can see like this dark region. That's part of the shadow, right? So we don't get like the super, super dark shadow that we would get with a total eclipse, but you can see kind of how this progresses up through part of Canada over just that bit of Greenland that we were viewing, basically up kind of over the pole, if anyone happens to be there. And then even over to the other side of the earth, part of like northern Russia. So that's the path of like I guess if you want to say total, the most complete annular eclipse for this round. I'll just run that back a couple hours so we can see it again because it's fun. And if you download OpenSpace, you can do this to your heart's content all night long, all week long, and just, fantasize about what you would see from Greenland or Northern Canada or wherever you want to be along here. But yeah, you get just this shadow passing. That's the shadow of the moon, y'all. Like when you run around outside, you have a shadow. Yeah, everything else has shadows too. So you can see basically the Earth's shadow is going off that way. Um, so yeah, so that's what's happening, and we're not going to see it obviously completely from New York City. And again, I am in Brooklyn here, so this is a little bit New York City centric. Um, but yeah, let's just go ahead and take a look at what we will be seeing, what we could see from New York City or very close to New York City. So we'll pop back over to the stellarium and relocate my location button. And I believe I have Brooklyn in here because Brooklyn, that's Brooklyn. Maybe we should keep going Brooklyn. Yeah, it's probably the one. Um, so in Brooklyn, yeah, it's going to be happening basically at sunrise. So I'm hoping to not be in Brooklyn, but be a little bit north of Brooklyn. Um, oh, yeah, this is the one. So if you go out and have like a nice clear horizon to the east northeast, at least from this latitude, so kind of east of northeast is where the sun will be rising. And so again, this will be in progress at sunrise for those of us in Brooklyn and surrounding areas. So sunrise is around, yeah, 5:30, just before 5:30. And that's basically when it's going to be at its maximum. So this is the moon rising, eclipsing part of the sun, just like blocking a big part of it out. So you have this kind of beautiful horn shape, kind of a crescent horn shaped sun. Um, so yeah, the maximum, I think 72%, 72.5% is going to be the maximum amount of the sun that the moon will be blocking as seen from here. Um, but if we follow it along, you really do have to get up kind of at the butt crack of dawn because within an hour, it's going to be over. So it's basically over by 6:30. Really, the last part of the moon is just kissing the sun at 6:30, 6:31. So if you want to see it from New York, you're getting up pretty early for that. If you want to see it from somewhere else, there's a fabulous website that can help you do that. Let me just put it up here. It's the is that there? Yeah, timeanddate.com. So on Stellarium, I have this little box that says date and time, but there's a website called timeanddate.com. And if you go there, you can put in your location and it'll tell you if you can see the eclipse or not, what time it's going to start and end, and all the details for wherever you are in the world. So really fantastic website. So check that out. Um, yeah. So I know I didn't put in a challenge earlier, right? So I said, go look for the Milky Way. I usually like to have some kind of naked eye challenge. So the Milky Way, if you're in a dark site, look for the Milky Way this week. But your other challenge is to one, find a way to view this safely using just using some kind of solar filter, or you can use a pinhole boxy kind of thing. Or you can even use, if I pop back over to open space, I have some other cool pictures in here. Um, you can use a picture. There's a picture, not that. Um, anything with a small hole, right? So you can use, the pinhole camera, or you can use, there I am making a bunny face. This was like a partial before a total eclipse. um, so there's like a cute little eye on the bunny. Or if you have like just a colander or anything that has like kind of mesh or little holes in it, basically you're seeing all these little crescent suns during the partial. So instead of full dots, you'll see little crescents. It might be a little bit trickier because the sun isn't going to be very high. Obviously, at sunrise. um, but yeah, that's your challenge is to just to go out and have fun with the partial eclipse. I think it is going to be as far west as Wisconsin because I checked for my mother. Yeah, you're not going to see a whole lot of it, but you can see a teensy weensy bit if you have like a very clear horizon exactly where the sun is rising. So, fun thing, super fun things to do. Obviously, be safe. Don't burn your eyeballs. It's not worth it. There's other things that you'll want to see in your lifetime. So, thanks for tuning in, joining me on this little Thursday evening tour around our celestial neighborhood. I realize I forgot to tell one joke, but hopefully someone else will tell it because I kind of didn't want to be the one to tell it. Um, but yeah, again, I'm Irene Pease, your friendly neighborhood astronomer. You can check out more of my videos, check out past stuff I've done at friendlyneighborhoodastronomer.com or subscribe to the YouTube channel. For the visuals, as usual, I've been using Stellarium, which you can find at stellarium.org, and OpenSpace, which you can find and download for free at openspaceproject.com. Clear skies, everyone. Be safe out there. Be especially safe viewing this. And if you haven't been vaccinated, go get vaccinated.